This is going to be a demo about how to use glaze layers when painting. The first thing you should do when painting is always have something that protects the surface you're painting on. I was painting at my kitchen table and forgot to do this before I started, so I had to scrub paint off the table when I was done. I recommend covering the surface with either a scrap piece of paper or plastic so the paint doesn't damage surfaces. If you are in a more designated art studio space, this might not be an issue. Once you have the area where you will work, you are going to need the supplies to work on the glaze layers. Brushes, palette, several of the complementary colors mixed into each other to create different values, and the original light and dark values you were working with in the original painting. I forgot to wrap my paints the last time I worked, so I have to remix my complementary color values again. I sped up the video so we don't waste time watching me do that. When those colors are mixed, you can start painting the glaze layers on the painting. I started with the cylinder and had to readdress my edges later. You do have to be brave to add this next color over your already developed painting because you will make things opaque in some areas, so the original monochromatic painting will disappear to some extent. As I paint, I'm following the value transitions I already developed in the painting. While I still can and should look at my reference, I have to trust that I did the best I could representing the values in my monochromatic painting. Remember, a real object is best, but I can also use a photograph. This makes the next layer of paint easier to do. Hopefully you also notice that the glaze layers add another layer of color complexity, what I like to call a richer color value. What you are actually doing is muting the intensity of the pure colors with white and the original colors complement, so you can create contrast and value or interest for individuals that will look at the finished work. I'm not just working with the complementary colors mixed together. I'm also using the pure colors as I work, mixing the colors on the canvas in addition to mixing them on my palette. Once you have one area done to the best of your ability, move to another part of the painting. I was a little haphazard as I did this, in that I painted the body of the cylinder, then moved to the table and background before addressing the top of the cylinder. While it doesn't really matter what order you paint in, it's generally a good idea to paint either the background first and then the subject or vice versa. I'm mentioning this in that it was a rather small painting and I was able to work on it in one sitting. Most paintings you will work on will have breaks or gaps in the work time. Whatever you do, make sure you address the whole canvas to keep the brush strokes and colors unified from one working day to another. In addition to making colors gradate, I also turned my canvas or board in order to reach different edges of objects easier. I also used chalk pastel to correct some flaws in the perspective as I worked. This is why having knowledge of drawing skills is so important in painting, because I can easily correct mistakes I have made while I paint. While I did speed up this video, it took me a little over an hour to mix my colors and complete the glaze layers on top of my monochromatic version. Part of the reason it took longer than the first time was because I was evaluating the quality and the unification of the paint and glaze layers as I worked. There are times I used too much of one color or another and I had to wipe paint away or paint over the area with another color until I was satisfied with the way the new color layer looked. As I'm saying this, there are still areas that could use work, such as the bottom right corner of the cylinder where there is a little too much of the grayish lavender without any yellow oxide mixed in. The same is true of the grayish lavender at the top of the cylinder. I should have spent more time blending there because there are flaws in the value transitions that distract the viewer's eye. Hopefully you can see how problem areas like that stick out like a sore thumb and should be addressed. Due to my time constraints, that is the best I could do for now. Here I used a piece of aluminum foil to preserve the paints in my palette. I also made sure to cap the plastic containers full of paint. When I was finished painting, I cleaned my brushes by tamping the brushes in a fresh cup of water, getting some soap on the bristles, and using another stiffer brush to clean the remaining paint out of my brushes. I also squeezed the remaining water out of the brush and used my fingers to form the bristles back together. I laid my brushes flat after that, but if you put them in a cup, make sure to store them with the bristles up, or the bristles will stay permanently in whatever position they dried. It's important to clean your brushes when you're done so that you can use them from one painting to another. Glaze layers not only add another color layer, making the painting more interesting to look at, but they can add dimension and texture to the work. In this last example, the textural areas are very nice, but some of the paint strokes are too opaque in the body of the cylinder, and the value is not transitioning correctly on the top of the cylinder. The area on the bottom right of the cylinder, where the cylinder meets the table, does not have enough contrast. The reflection should follow the value of the cylinder more closely on the right side as well. Each painting you complete like this will get easier to do. It's important to struggle through right now so you learn about color mixing and what happens when you put one color layer over another. Each time you use new colors, that learning starts over. This should tell you why polychromatic paintings are the most difficult. Right now you are gaining experience. While I have more painting experience than you, there are still things I struggle with, especially when I stop painting for a while or work when I'm tired. Being in a different mood is no reason to stop painting, but it may mean working on a different painting so the brush strokes stay consistent from one painting to the next. Everyone develops their own style of painting and way of working with brushes. Some people paint more opaquely, and some work with the complementary colors all at once. Best wishes to you on your glaze layers, and remember, have fun!